This is a mock interview conducted by Forum IAS Academy at New Delhi. The interview panel includes eminent academicians, retired bureaucrats, and other luminaries. The objective of program is to acquaint the candidate with the format and expectations of the personality test conducted by UPSC.
May I come in, sir?
Please come in.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah,
Good evening.
sir. Please sit down.
Thank you, sir.
So you are Kanchi Singhal,
Yes, sir.
and you live in Agra or somewhere else?
Sir, in Agra.
You are born in Agra and you live in Agra.
So I was born and brought up in Agra.
You have taken law as a subject.
Yes, sir.
Since 17 you are trying for civil service.
Yes, sir.
As we see, legal services have become very, very remunerative these days.
Yes, sir.
So why do you want to come to civil service?
Sir, I worked for a brief period of 7 months after doing my law. And at that time, I got this chance to think that what really is my purpose and vision in life. And there I realized that I wanted to use whatever knowledge and skills I had to contribute, and also to contribute in ways where I'm getting a multiple platform and multiple areas to perform. So I realized that this was the only profile which offered me to be not just a lawyer or a judge, but to be everything really at the same time, to be involved in execution of law and policy making both at the same time. And I also felt that somewhere my skills could also develop, which I don't even know if I possess. So it was really, I felt.
So the skills that you don't know whether you possess,
Yes, sir.
even those skills you want to develop.
Yes,
That's very interesting. So you have law as a subject. You have taken means this. Do you think law can be an agent of social change?
Yes, sir. Sir, when I was doing also my law, this was the first topic that we had referred, that law acts as a social weapon. But I also felt and realized somewhere down the line that while laws are very well intended, if they're not executed properly, they may not be able to fulfill the purpose that they are. One example I can give is the Domestic Violence Act. So it's a very well-intended law. But because of the social taboos and social issues, we are still finding that women don't even report them. So, yes.
That means law cannot be necessarily
Sir, it can.
an agent of social change.
Sir, it can be, but it has to be drafted in such a way or be coupled with the implementation in such a way.
No, you're complementing yourself, you're contradicting yourself. When you say, once you say it can do it, and then you say implementation is required. So yes, that means law, when implemented properly, can be a source of change. So law alone cannot be.
So we can say that it's a first step at least. It is a necessity nonetheless.
It's a necessary condition,
Yes.
but not sufficient condition.
Certainly.
Okay. Now tell me, there was a law passed on electoral bonds,
Yes, sir.
and it was passed as a money bill. Do you think, according to the cardinals of jurisprudence and constitution provisions, it was justified to put this particular law as money bill? It's a personal bill. Of course, government has taken it as a money bill. So what do you feel about it?
So money bill, the definition of money bill is given under the Constitution. And if we look at it, the speaker is the one that has to take a decision reading the detailed provisions of it. So I have not really gone into the details, but what it seems to be on the face of it, I'm not sure if it falls into the tax part of it or the fines that have been laid down as conditions in that article. But I think I would have to believe in the speaker's judgment here that it was.
Because it amends Companies Act, it amends electoral law.
Right.
So many laws it is amending, and then it is done, it passes the money bill. Do you think agreeing to the speaker's viewpoint won't be injustice?
So when the court,
Because that is challenged in the court, isn't it?
So, but
that is what has been challenged in the court. That is not a money bill.
Okay, sir. But I think the court also cannot there take a view on it, because I think the speaker's judgment would be then final there.
Well, let's leave that. Let's leave at that. Now, in society, you might have, well, coming to Agra, let me ask one question about Agra. Agra architecture, it reflects a kind of mingling of two cultures. Do you agree with that?
Certainly, sir. So
How?
it is a synthesis of Indian culture and the Persian culture which came to India, and it gave rise to the Indo-Islamic architecture. So we see the Taj Mahal, the Red Fort, all of these are reflection of that architecture.
Taj Mahal and Red Fort.
So the Agra Fort, the Agra Red
Agra Fort.
Yes, sir.
Agra Fort.
Yes.
And what about Akbar's Maqbara?
Yes, sir. The
Is
Sikandar.
it also the same, or it is old Central Asian culture or Persian culture?
So Sikandra does not contain a tomb, but it does contain the arcade form of architecture, the arcade that the Indo-Islamic architecture has. So it certainly is it's not.
So what is the special feature of Islamic architecture?
So it is different from the Trabeate structure, which had the which was a square and the sir, I'm unable to recall the exact term for it, but it was mainly the arc-based structure, the arcuate structure as we call it. So
It's more on the dome. It was onion-shaped domes.
yes, sir.
Rather round. Central Asian domes are round, and Indian temples used to be like this.
Yes.
And they mixed both and became, those kind of synthesis of the two. Anyways, now tell me, in our house, in our homes, in India, for instance, the ladies were revered, say, yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devata. But why it is in every house, women are being burnt, they are being charged high dowry, there is domestic violence, and ladies who should have been really worshipped in a way, they are living in very bad shape. Do you think what has gone wrong and where it has gone wrong?
So one issue I see here is in the society itself. So I think the society takes time to change. And while we are seeing a lot of transition, but some places still retain that patriarchal attitude and that.
But when patriarchal attitude came in? Because initially when you say, where naryastu pujyante ramante tad devata, that means at that time, women were very much revered. They were respected.
Yes, sir.
So something must have gone wrong, how patriarchy came in.
So with my limited knowledge, because I've not read into details of sociology, except for the exam, but what I understand, I think in the medieval India was the time when this started. But I'm not really sure, sir, about when exactly the time I can say. And it also got broadened in the British era, because although they tried, some social religious reforms were there, but later due to British policies, they sided with the orthodox elements. So that continued and it could not be really reformed.
But that means orthodox elements were there.
Yes, sir.
So even if they were not there, British sided with, but suppose they were not there, even then that could have continued, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
The British had, basically they did not make any positive intervention, that you can say, you can blame them. But the deterioration was internal, isn't it?
Sir, I remember reading that somewhere in between the ancient and the medieval India, as we divided, the women became, because of the part of religious kind of interpretations that were done, they were kept out of religious prayers. So maybe perhaps because of that, but I'm not really an expert in sociology. I've not read
Or
it.
maybe because man was bringing money, food at home, maybe that was given more importance than other works that the lady was doing at home. And that is how one got more and more importance, and that is how patriarchy developed.
Okay.
Isn't it? Now tell me, in India, for instance, if you go to East India and come to Rajasthan, fetus killing in western part of India was much more than it was in the East. The respect for women also in the East, they are more involved, they are more equal than in the West. Is there any reason behind it?
So perhaps because in East, we had the tribals culture. So that was the ancient culture which sort of continued. And because in the West, we had the system where the kings and the Rajputs and all the other dynasties which we had, they had a system where they needed an heir to the throne. And perhaps because of that, the male heir was preferred, and that is why the female lost the kind of position.
Yeah, I think women in the East were more involved in agriculture, in economic activities. So in the hills, for instance, it is women who does all the agriculture work.
Okay.
Man doesn't do anything. And in this side, they were away from there. Probably that is where they lost. You have been co-founder of Center of International Law in college. What is it?
So it's a society in the college by which we made students discuss on international issues. So when I entered the college, there was no real dedicated cell and society for this. We had
So
different
it is
societies.
discussing various issues.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it?
Yes.
And you write diaries.
Yes, sir.
What is the latest diary you have written?
So I write my thoughts in general. It's just
Any
one.
latest one?
It's-
Anything that you would like to share?
So latest I wrote about the kind of uncertainty which I was going through in this exam, because I've been preparing for 3-4 years. And finally, when I got through the stage, so I was really glad, and I was just thinking about it and I wrote about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Although you are from Agra, in your city there is a park called Paliwal Park.
Yes.
Who is this gentleman Paliwal?
So it is dedicated to Mr. S.T. Paliwal, and it was earlier known as the Hewitt Park, named after an Englishman, Hewitt, Mr. Hewitt. And this has a history of where Mahatma Gandhi once went visited Agra.
In your city there is Maqbara Etnaudullah.
Yes, sir.
Who this gentleman Etnaudullah is? He was a Mughal king, or who he was?
So he was the father of Noor Jahan. And this was the first tomb which came out, first architecture which was fully of marble in the Indo-Islamic architecture. And this is dedicated to her father.
We were discussing about social changes and law, my dear friend. We have a very tough act against dowry, right? But every marriage I go, I find dowry is being taken and discussed in detail, right? And a huge car is in the pandal, and which father of girl says that this is I'm going to give to my daughter. So do you think Dowry Act has been able to end dowry?
So I think there are issues with the act. I mean, as I initially also mentioned in the part of my discussion, that there are laws which are well intended, but because of social issues, they still are not implemented. So one issue here is that if the families, if one of them also goes and report dowry, then it defeats the purpose of entering into marriage at all. So neither of them wants to go and report it. So that is the first issue here itself. Second, again, because of the social norms and the acceptance of dowry, nobody has really had the, I would say, the courage to change and stand up against it. So even though we see media now talking about it, but I think it'll take some time to really do something, I mean, to really see a change on the ground.
Have you heard about a term called cryptocurrency?
Yes, sir.
Can you define that?
So cryptocurrency would be any asset that is considered a way of exchange for goods. So, I mean, if we have a currency which is, it is considered a legal tender because the RBI has sanctioned it to be a legal tender. But with respect to a cryptocurrency, it is just a digital currency by which we can exchange goods if it is demanded.
Well, there is a political, economic and a legal issue about cryptocurrency. In the recent budget, our finance minister has said that it will be taxed. It will be taxed. And when somebody asked her whether dealing in cryptocurrency is legal or illegal, she said, I don't have answer to that. We are still examining whether it is legal or not. So issue is, the activity is legal or illegal, we do not know. But taxing it is perfectly legal, that we know. Do you think it's the right kind of tax law?
So with respect to cryptocurrency, it has seen a huge increase. And so the government has definitely to regulate it in some way. Taxing it is the first step to stop it from being in circulation without any regulation, because it was a way of even having economic offenses being committed through cryptocurrency. So the government also has maintained the stand that it is still trying to look into how it can be regulated, because the demand is huge and entire parallel economies are running through it. But I think tax is the first step, and it's a correct step to do, because that is what will at least tell the people that it pays to it will involve a cost to deal with cryptocurrency.
But my dear friend, if taxes regulate a thing, then cigarettes and liquor must have been regulated very smartly. They have very high taxes. Do you think that higher taxes will lead to better regulation?
So I don't think this would be a long-term policy of the government. I'm sure that there soon will be a law on this. But at least for the time being, until the position of this asset is really clear, I think this is the best way we could have started at least.
Can you tell us the rate of tax on crypto?
Sir, if I can recall, it was around 30%.
Well, you come from Uttar Pradesh, Agra, and UP government has a scheme called One District, One Product.
Yes.
What's your district's product?
So my district's product is the leather goods in Agra. So the shoe industry in Agra has a huge export to European countries. So that is the product.
Well, in your city, there was a place called Noori Gate. Name of that was changed to Bhagat Singh Gate.
Okay.
Do you know this or not?
So
My argument is that, question is that in UP there is lot of change in the names. Faizabad to Ayodhya, Noori Gate to Bhagat Singh. Is it right or wrong? What's your take on that change name? Tomorrow we change the name of Taj Mahal to say Tejo May Mahal. Or we can convert Red Fort into Ramgarh. How do you take that?
So I think names of a certain area are related to its heritage, and whatever ancient names were kept for that particular place, they definitely changed with time as dynasties came and went. But I think there's no harm when it comes to changing names if at all public opinion is with it. So if the public demands and considers it right, then I think there is no harm in it, because people also would demand to be connected with their heritage. So wherever public opinion is with it, I see no harm, sir.
What was the April month's collection of GST?
I'm not sure of the figures. Yeah.
Okay. I must have heard about GST Act since you are a student of law.
Yes.
Can you tell me 3 major problems of GST Act?
So one is that the input tax credit, which is there, sometimes it is misused and we are seeing issues in the implementation. Secondly, also the anti-profiteering clause, which is there, that also has seen some issues with regard to implementation. I remember that in general, there are issues with respect to e-way bills also now, but I'm not sure the details of how e-way bill is being causing an issue. But these are the major ones I can recall.
What's the positive impact of Ukraine crisis on Indian economy?
So India certainly has one opportunity here, because Ukraine was a major wheat supplier. So since Ukraine has now been involved in war, India has an opportunity to fill that vacuum and supply more wheat. So our exports could increase in wheat.
Since you are from Uttar Pradesh, you must be having an idea of that we have a television web series, you can say, called Mirzapur. Have you seen that?
So I've heard of it.
Well, it's lots of crime, lots of gali galoj. And you come from Uttar Pradesh. So do you think it's right to name a web series and whole Mirzapur district and the surrounding areas have been bad named? What's your reaction to that?
Sir, I think films as such, not just this film, but any film, is based on fictional episodes. That is what it is one of the warnings when they show, or one of the sentences that it tell the audience. Certainly, it has an impact on people. People who are living there also are seen with a certain impression. So definitely it has an impact on mind. But then if we are to see, this is upon the audience as to how they have to interpret it and how they have to see and interpret the film. So I think it has negatives to it, but really it is upon the audience.
Have you seen a movie called Gangubai Kathiawadi, which has come recently?
Sir, I know about it, but I did not get a chance.
Well, in that case, demand was made by the lady that this prostitution should be made legal. It should be made legal like any other profession is to be made legal. And of course, it is not legal. What's your take on that? Should prostitution be made legal? The argument of the lady was that if others are offering services, we too are offering services. So if others are perfectly legally entitled to so many things, we should also be. You being a law student from the social angle, that was in 60s, now we are in 2022. What's your take on this question in 2022?
So looking at the condition of the prostitutes and whatever we come to know from the media reports, they are suffering. That is true, and their conditions are bad because they are unregulated. It's an unregulated profession. While I do want a law in the longer term, and I really want a law for this, but I think right now the society is not prepared for this. So I think we need to first, because this is a social law, and any social law when comes has an impact on personal lives of people and can give certain reactions which can create public order situations as well. So I think firstly we need to discuss, create awareness on this, use media as this film has come. It will, I think, become a starting point to understand the issue, and then we can in the long term definitely see a law.
Last of my question, you come from Agra. There is a law graduate from Agra University who later on became Prime Minister of this country. Can you name that gentleman? Law graduate from Agra University who became Prime Minister of this country.
Sir, I'm not sure.
Chaudhary Charan Singh.
Okay.
He was LLB from Agra University.
Okay, sir.
So,
Thank you.
Can you tell me the evolution of Article 21 as it's today?
Yes, sir.
How did it evolve?
So Article 21 mentions that no person shall be deprived of his life and liberty except with procedure established by law. So initially, the case of Gopalan had interpreted this procedure established by law as being any law. So if any law is made and it gives a procedure, it is fine if it is taking the liberty. That was the position that was kept. And over the years, this position was upheld in many cases. But we saw a marked change when it came to Maneka Gandhi's case. And in that, the due process of law, the doctrine which the American jurisprudence has, that was read into this provision. And it was said that the procedure itself has to be just and it cannot be arbitrary. And only then can such a procedure take away the life and liberty. Thereafter, when this liberal interpretation was given, it led to a wide variety of laws which involved criminal justice, which involved environmental rights, and various other areas.
All right. How about right to privacy? This is also comes under 21 only, right?
Yes.
But do you think we as a country are prepared for providing right to privacy as enforceable?
Sir, right to privacy is certainly a part of the human right and part of Article 21. So we need it as we know, but yes, there are issues in the implementation because primarily the digital media that we have now, this is somewhere which has created issues in the implementation. In this context, I think the data protection bill which we have would lead to a better implementation of this right.
Okay. What happened in the ADM Jabalpur case? Why is it called a black day in Indian judiciary?
So in that case, the emergency that was applied, so the habeas corpus was also disallowed. It was said that even the court will not have the right to take up a habeas corpus writ also. So that is why it is known.
Can you reflect back in the modern history during India's freedom struggle and highlight a similar instance where habeas corpus was denied?
Sir, I'm not sure. But
Okay. Right.
I can in general say that many times when freedom fighters were put under bars, the British courts did not really allow habeas corpus.
What do you mean by doctrine of pith and substance?
So whenever we have a conflict between the interpretation of the lists, which wherein we have Article 246, which talks about the non-substantive, which is also known as the non-substantive clause. That is, whenever a central list will be given a priority and then the state list, and that's how it is mentioned. So whenever there is a conflict between the laws, they would see what the objective of that law was. So pith and substance means that the essence of the law would be seen, and accordingly it would be decided in whose jurisdiction could be made.
All right. And you do Kathak also. You've been involved a lot with Kathak, right?
Yes.
Since childhood, was it? Because you've appeared in DD Metro, and I think it was
Yes,
stopped
sir.
a long time ago.
Yes, I've been a dancer since I was 4
How old
years
were you when you did this?
Sir, I was around 7 years old.
Yeah. Okay. And since then, have you been pursuing this?
Yes.
How do you pursue it now?
Sir, now because of the preparation, I've not been able to participate in competitions. Till college, I was participating in competitions. But now I do it whenever I want to relax. And
Okay, you do it at home only.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me some gharanas of Kathak dance?
Yes, sir. So I'm a part of the Lucknow Gharana. There are other Gharanas also, the Banaras Gharana and the Jaipur Gharana.
Any famous personality from Lucknow Gharana?
Yes, sir. Sir, Pandit Birju Maharaj was one of the main proponent of this.
Okay, correct. All right. Tell me, what should Uttar Pradesh do to solve its law and order problem? And do you think law and order problem is hindering its development as the sole criteria?
Sir, law and order used to be a big issue in Uttar Pradesh initially. I think in the past years, it has certainly seen a big improvement. I don't think that it's the only issue which causes a challenge to the economic development of the state. But we have to still work on it on many areas to make it perfect. So there is also some way to go, but it has seen a huge improvement in the last few years. So regarding your question as to why it is a problem and how can we improve it, I think, sir, improvement needs to come also, it needs to come at the way it is implemented. So as we are seeing the ways by which the government is working on the illegal constructions, that is one good way. So the strictness has been seen. But also, I think from the front of the citizens now, it is needed that they also
Don't you think it's exercise of power is too much in Uttar Pradesh, which is violative of constitutionalism?
Sir, I'm unable to get the question.
So, is there excessive use of power in Uttar Pradesh?
So, with respect to the illegal constructions and
use of police, use of administration as a whole?
Sir, because there were situations which led to law and order, there had to be use of power. Certainly, in some issues, some situations, there was issues where people felt that there has been excessive power. But I think in a state which needs law enforcement, the government has to step in.
How about encounters? Are they justified?
Sir, encounters are done whenever the police sees an attack. So it is a way by which the police has to defend itself. So I don't think that encounters are per se wrong unless there are issues in the process in which, the basis on which it is done. So if it is a necessity, encounters are the way that police has to defend itself.
Okay. Do you support AFSPA?
Sir, AFSPA, when it was passed back in 1950s, it was a necessity in those areas which were disturbed, especially the northeastern areas. And over time, it did serve its purpose. But I think the intention at that time was to keep it for short term. But because the conditions were not suited, it dragged on for some time. But now that it has been relaxed in some areas in the northeast, I think it's a good step.
Okay, that's it from my end.
You have a background in law. Very recently, a judgment came from Allahabad High Court. It was a case related to, a murder case in 1982. And the Allahabad High Court, they acquitted the convict by the person who was convicted by the lower court. So he spent 40 years in jail, and now, after 40 years, we can say that justice has been served to him. But again, 40 years of his life gone. What is wrong with the judicial system as such? Can you point out why is there such a high pendency of cases?
Sir, one issue is the judge to population ratio in India. So if I were to go by numbers, it is 21 judges for 10 lakh people that we have. So that is the one main issue. So we have to increase the number of judges and the infrastructure as a whole. Second, sir, there is a problem of adjournments which the courts undertake. So there is no limit when it comes to how long the cases can drag on. Thirdly, I also feel there's an absence of alternative dispute resolutions. So certain cases, for example, especially the commercial cases and the petty cases, which can go to alternative dispute resolution, also drag on for the courts. So these are the three main reasons I can see.
Okay. And also about appeals. What about appeals? Recently, Supreme Court was hearing a case whether Nimbus is a lemonade or a preservative-based drink. Do you think these are really the cases that Supreme Court should be hearing?
Well, sir, I think it is in the court's right. It must have seen some substantive issue of law over there. Otherwise, the court would have dismissed it.
Okay. There was a discussion some time ago regarding, because to be honest, that was not the original mandate of Supreme Court, right? It was meant to be a constitutional court. There was, discussion going on that to resolve this kind of an issue, a national court of appeals should be set up separately. Supreme Court's domain should be exclusively constitutional cases or whatever its original, jurisdiction. So, do you think that this will help to some extent? The pendency of cases, do you think? Because there are lots of cases that are, pending at the Supreme Court as well. Forget about the lower courts. I think 370 is under challenge and it is pending, and there is no end visible when the court will hear it. So, what about the highest judiciary? What reforms should be undertaken there?
So yes, I think national courts of appeal would really help because it can help us prioritize the constitutional cases on one bench and then the court of appeal can take this up. Also, I think if we have more benches of the Supreme Court, that also can be one step forward to it. But again, I think it is the lower judiciary which needs much more action.
Okay, yeah. You said about frequent adjournments. So what can be the solution there? Is there no provision, any law that controls that? Or if there is no legal provision, then what is the way forward? I mean, who will step in, whether it should be the legislature or whether it is judiciary itself that should, step in?
So one effort has to come from the judiciary, definitely from its own side, where the judges are trained in order to fast track the cases. But also maybe we can look at a law which has time bound provisions in it, where certain cases have to be disposed in a certain manner in a certain time.
Is there any provision related to accountability of judges? Any law that is there?
So I have not come across it. I don't think there's a provision.
Okay, all right. Have you heard of the term post-legislative scrutiny?
I can understand what it means, yes, sir.
Do you think that it is implemented in India's case? The British Parliament, they follow it. Is it followed in India? And first, what is your interpretation of post-legislative scrutiny?
So I think if a legislation is coming, thereafter the court can see if it is, I'm not sure.
Okay, it's just the parliament or the lawmaking body themselves, they undertake the scrutiny whether, the law has achieved its, intended, what it intended to achieve. Can you point out certain laws where, the intention was totally different and the outcome was totally different?
So I can't think of any law right now.
Okay, all right. Have you heard about ICJS?
So ICJ,
Interoperable Criminal Justice System. It has been recently launched. Do you know what is it?
no, sir.
Okay, all right, no issues. I think that's it from my side. That's all good.
Thank
Wish you all
you.
the best.
Thank you, sir.